Hi, my name is Karen Holmes. I'm the founder and director of the World Peace Organization for the One World Government. One of our exempt purposes is to purify the U.S. legal system. So this morning I wanted to take a little bit of time to look at the new Supreme Court justice ruling related to Texas and its abortion ban, overturning that abortion ban. Basically, why there's and that yesterday I talked about how we need to make a paradigm shift that is, let's say, we're unraveling the things that are causing all the fighting, all the anger between people. So right now there's this huge dispute between the people who are defending the right to life and the people who the people who want to get abortions and the people who want to ban abortions. Okay, so and the Supreme Court now has, let's say, Roe v. Wade is being threatened. Now, I told you that until we can figure out how to do things spiritually and with our minds, the crutches are sometimes necessary. You know, until you can figure out how to, all healing, you can say, is instantaneous, but sometimes it takes 20 years for it to happen. So you can overturn cancer, for example, because God never said anybody had to have cancer, but sometimes you have to figure out what happened to get there. So we're looking now at this idea and unraveling this. Because let's say that when you're in a crisis situation, your perspective narrows. It continues to narrow. And this is why the existing structure that's responsible for it doesn't solve the problems, because the people who are in it, their perspective has just continued to narrow and until they can't see the alternatives. Okay, and they have the right to do that. Congress has the right to do things, but their perspective is narrowed because they're watching their perspective get narrow without understanding that it is getting narrower. They just know they have the responsibility to do it, but they don't have the wider perspective. So we have to look at the wider perspective, God's perspective, basically, that allows people to understand where they made their mistake. And then coming up with a plan makes much more sense. Okay, today I want to talk about the right to sue must not take away other people's rights. Okay, that's constitutional. You can't. How about our founding fathers said, we are endowed by our Creator with certain unalienable rights. So let's say it's the Creator's perspective that we need to look at. That opens up a whole nother can of worms, because the Bible has gotten narrower, the perspective on the Bible, and what God's perspective has gotten narrower too. When George W. Bush brought in the Christians into the Republican Party to help boost this whole idea, he equated God with Republicans, but that's not so, because God is the God creator of us all, not just the Republicans. All right, so the Republicans are not necessarily defending God. There's the pendulum has swung out. Now there's this flip-flop effect where the Republicans are not defending God or our rights or whatever, and then the people who are defending our rights a lot of times are being attacked. So that's where we are now in our country and our world. There's this flip-flop effect that's going on now. So let's flip it before it gets too far out by just widening our perspective. Okay, the Texas ban on abortions six weeks before some women even know they're pregnant, and people can sue. If you see a woman getting pregnant and having an abortion, you can sue her. Okay, you can't sue somebody who's having a miscarriage. You can't, oh, you poor dear, you lost your baby. Okay, all right, did she actually want to lose it or not? Okay, so it's kind of weird how that works, but that's narrow perspective again. So let's consider this. Okay, there are times when it's okay to sue. I'm going to give you a time when it is okay to sue. So this one, the Texas, we're going to use this as our test. If you are going to sue, you can sue somebody. Now, I'm not making this blanket way, but it's let's say it's okay to sue when you're protecting people's rights, and that's not a blanket statement. I'm saying I'm going to give you an example of when it is okay to sue when you're protecting somebody's rights. And this is something that we stand on in our organization. Our organization cannot justify this. So we're looking at the Supreme Court and how that it's the attempt, like Sheldon Whitehouse is a prosecuting attorney before he became a senator, and he's stood on the Senate floor and talked about undermining the Supreme Court, efforts to undermine the Supreme Court. So let's just give Sheldon Whitehouse our thumbs up. It says, okay, he's a prosecuting attorney who's protecting the Supreme Court, because that's his right to do that, because the Senate has the right, it's responsibility to protect the rights of the people. That's his job. He's doing his job by protecting the rights of the people. The Senate is supposed to protect the rights of the people. So the senators are doing their job when they're protecting the rights of the people. Now, so we're looking at Sheldon Whitehouse protecting the Constitution, and he's a Democrat who's protecting the rights of the people, and then the Republicans, who are supporting the insurrection to take away the rights of the people to vote. Okay, so who's doing their job? Who is actually protecting the rights of the people? The right to protect the rights of the people goes to the Senate. Okay, so the senators, are they doing their job by protecting the rights of the people? The House, because it's based on let's say the population, the House of Representatives represents the people, the will of the people. It's a majority vote based on the will of the people. The Senate addresses the rights of the people, and that's why there are only 2 senators. It doesn't matter what size of the state. So the House represents the will of the people. The Senate addresses the rights of the people. So you can tell about use of power and abuse of power by whether they're protecting the rights of the people. Now we're going to look at when it's okay, the rights of the people, because then we get into another weird idea here. Okay, I'm going to give you the Texas example, the Texas ban. The Supreme Court is voted to. The liberals on the court said, no, that's unconstitutional. We cannot do that because you cannot have vigilantism. You cannot sue people. This happens. You're taking away the rights of the woman to have an abortion. That's right. The woman, the Republicans are talking about right to life, but a fetus, an embryo and a fetus doesn't have before it's born, doesn't have any legal rights. We're talking about the government, doesn't have any legal rights. You cannot leave money to the fetus doesn't have the right to vote. It doesn't have, when it takes its first breath, we're talking about a government making a decision about rights. It has to be the point where it draws its first breath and it's separated from its mother. Because how do you separate a baby from its mother? The rights of the mother and the rights of the baby, Okay, now, all right, all these ideas get kind of jumbled up. It's because the definition of life has to be when it takes its first breath, not when it gets its heartbeat. If a person is is, this is based on the idea of astrology and the natal. This is getting very complex, but let's just clarify this now with a way when you are protecting your rights, when you have the right to sue somebody. In fact, you have the duty to sue somebody when they're taking away somebody else's rights. Okay, now I'm going to share with you, you know what the Texas law is. Now, let's clarify this idea by saying that what we do uphold, okay, that protects the rights of the people. Okay, this is our laws of inheritance. This is a document that I channeled, and it explains the right of the individual to decide succession. Okay, the person, the laws of inheritance. Okay, let me share with you this. It is the right of the individual to decide succession of real property and assets without interference. Okay? All right. Okay. All right, so when you do that, our legal system is dependent on English law. A lot of it is dependent on English law. And the wealthy people are the ones that mostly wrote our laws. Okay, the people who did that are the wealthy people in many cases, like laws of inheritance. They set it up so that they could pass on the crown, for example, to somebody that they choose. Okay, they wanted to take their money, their assets, and turn them over to somebody that they choose. Not that it's going to be up and stolen or whatever by somebody who plays the game of greed. Okay, so that's right. It is the right of the individual to decide succession of real property and assets without interference. Okay, so now, if you are standing on that clarifies something here, doesn't it? That what happens if somebody comes in and tries to interfere with that? Now, that kicks us to the next idea. It is the privilege of the executor to be given responsibility to dispose of property as declared by the will. Okay, what happens if the executor, the privilege, okay, a privilege is different than a right. Okay, a privilege is different than a right. It's just saying, okay, so if that interferes with the decision, so let's say the executor, I know people use different words now for that, but if the executor of the estate decides that he's going to keep it for himself or herself, then that kicks it to the next level. It's the right of the executor to do what must be done as stated in the will, the intent of the deceased. So the right, then if that goes to court, then that has the privilege can be taken away from an executor. Okay, but they can't stop the executor from doing what's in the will. All right, now this is where we come into some interesting ideas here. Okay, it's the duty, it is the duty to follow the laws of the state, of everyone, to follow the laws of the state and to follow established precedent. Yeah, we have to follow the law. Okay, if the person leaves something in his will that isn't necessarily legal, something to leave, then that can be contested. Okay, the law can be contested, the will can be contested if the person isn't of right mind or whatever. The laws of the state have to come first. Okay, the states must abide by legal parameters, and the will is the expressed desire of the decedent. Okay, all right. Anyone has the right to contest the will following established protocol, but not supersede the instructions specified in the legal will. Yeah, makes sense, doesn't it? Okay, the next one is, the contestation of the will does not imply an individual has the right to deny other heirs or beneficiaries their legal rights. By making that assumption, one opens oneself up to due process of the law. Okay, see, all this makes sense in terms of rights, duties, and privileges. Okay? Should an individual, any individual, believe this legal process has been abrogated, it is the right, duty, and privilege to question the process followed through normal legal channels. Okay, there's an example of where anybody can sue somebody, has the right, duty, and privilege, the duty, and the right to sue somebody. Because in this case, you are protecting the rights of the individual. You're protecting the rights of the individual to be able to decide for himself or herself what to do with the assets, to stand on the will. You're protecting the rights of somebody. This one, you cannot take away the rights. So let's look at the rights of the individual and question those rights. Here we have a case where it's okay for somebody to sue somebody else to protect the rights, but not to take somebody else's rights. Under universal law, we have the right, we have our inalienable rights that were given to us. Our Creator stands on universal rights. Our rights are to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, among others. Okay? We also have the right to a pristine environment, to live in a pristine environment. The earth is a closed ecosystem, and what happens in one place happens to another. I mean, when somebody contaminates the world, nobody has the right to interfere in somebody else's environment. So what we do is we start becoming stewards of the land to protect everybody's rights. Okay, now this is where we are, is we have to start looking at when our drive to take away somebody's rights interferes with somebody else's life without interference. Okay, without anybody's interference. Okay, so do you have the right to interfere in the rights of somebody else? That's what we're looking at right now. Do you have the right to interfere in anyone else's life? Our life is, the definition of life is not the right to breathe. Our definition of right is that you are saying for abortion, they're using heartbeat, but that's not life. That entity, that fetus, that embryo in that womb doesn't have any rights until it takes its first breath, because God, you can choose. The mother has the right to choose to have a spontaneous abortion. She cannot. There's no way to execute that idea. There's no way to look at, for the judge to come in and say, you broke the law by having a miscarriage. Okay, so this is something that is between the Creator and the person. Then that is because that is something where you're not taking a pill to do it. You don't need a pill to have a spontaneous abortion. You can just choose to let it go whoosh. Okay, that nobody can interfere in that. Okay, no court. If your right is here, your right to turn over to this. The reason for this is, the reason why we do that is you have the right to have what's on there are also laws that say you cannot interfere, you cannot coerce somebody who's not of right mind to do that. You cannot go and say, I need a will. I'm going to kill you if you don't turn your will over to me. That's interference too. So then you have to, but we're looking at what God is saying. And the reason for it is because a lot of times what you have is what's on somebody's silver platter. Okay, silver platter. That is what you need, that what God has given you. God stands on this law of inheritance. This is a channeled message that I got. Because you have the right to have what's on your silver platter. That is where we are right now. Is you have to be able to create your life without interference also. You have the right to create your life without interference, to fulfill your purpose in life. When you do that, then what's on your silver platter will come to you. It'll just come to you because it's God's will to come to you. We have a soul agreement, which basically a contract with God to fulfill our purpose in life. And what God will do, the Creator, based on universal law, is God will direct things to you during your lifetime that will allow you to fulfill your purpose in life. You can't interfere with God's will, basically, to do what it is. Now that's separating out. That is talking about universal law. We're separating out constitutional law and federal law from universal law. So now we have to look at God. We're going to start to concentrate on what God's will is. And then we get into a whole nother misunderstanding that needs to be addressed, and that is, what is God's will? Is it God's will for the abortion people to look at thou shalt not kill? Are you killing somebody? Can you look at a baby, a fetus, and say this? So let's say we're looking now what combines this and what combines the right to abortion, spontaneous abortion, is what's on your silver platter, what is meant to come to you from God, that you cannot interfere with God's will. Right to life, right to have what's on your silver platter. Okay, now the final thing about that I want to say is that in the third dimension, we're talking about the paradigm shift. In the third dimension, we play power games to compensate for lack of power. Money and power, people equate money and power. All this is in the books that I have, and you'll have the right to look at all of these books, to buy the books when I bring in the professional publishing team. Right now, I can only sell my books to independent members, and there aren't any because they're all fighting right now. This first stage of the planning process is herding cats. So I have to unravel all of this fight that's going on. The genocide, character genocide, that's the first government proposal. So all this stuff will be, all this mess, this chaos. The first step was to introduce the letter to the Supreme Court. That addresses God's law. Okay, so we have God's law, but then we're getting into Sharia law, we're getting into God's law. Who's God? Is it the Christian God? Is it the Muslim God? Is it the interpretation? How does that work? So now we're going to kind of separate that out. And I am not an attorney. I cannot go to the Supreme Court and argue an argument in front of the Supreme Court. I might be invited to do that, but I'm not going to be able to do that. Okay, so what I have to do is I have to talk about God's law, and I have to separate that out and let the people, and bring in people who can do that. All right, but it's still the same, because what will happen is the people who are fighting universal law are fighting the universe. They're fighting God. The God is the universe mother and earth mother. Okay, so we have a mother and we have the Father, not the Holy Trinity, Father, Son, and Holy Ghost. No, it's Father, Mother, and Son. And I'm not even sure. I've been studying theology for a long time, and I'm not even sure where the Holy Ghost comes in there. You know, I think basically they got their gift, and they had to separate out a long time ago, created this schism between this whole thing. So we're separating this stuff out now, and we're going to say that when you are creating your project, we're going to make another paradigm shift here. We're going to say, this is Noah's idea of the rainbow. My bookstore is called On the Rainbow Peace Store. Okay, On the Rainbow. I have On the Rainbow, and what happens is you're walking the rainbow. Okay. So what we have right now is a very interesting way. When you get up to the point where you're creating your life, you're actually creating your life, then what will happen is then you'll have everything you need to make it happen. For those people who are trying to prevent that from happening, then what we have is they're fighting the universe and they cannot win. All right. So all of this is, I'm comparing the right to sue cannot take away other people's rights. And this is an example of when it is okay to sue to protect somebody's rights. And this is the Texas ban. Okay, so did we just flip a Supreme Court decision maybe? Okay. Is it possible to flip a Supreme Court decision? That's up to the attorneys in our group, the legal experts in our group, for them to do it, because right now I'm not capable of doing it. I have to focus on what God's will is, and because that's what my area of expertise is. To be part of the global renaissance, everybody has to function from within their own capacity. And this is how you become part of the global renaissance, is you function only from within your own capacity, and you let other people function from their capacity. But sometimes you have to kind of pull things apart. And you know who it is when you're offering them a chance to be able to function on a higher level. If you are saying, I'm going to help you perpetrate an insurrection, because we're going to fight to protect the right to Donald Trump's right to do that. Donald Trump never had the right to overturn Roe v. Wade. That, he got a lot of votes, but is it possible for him to do that? The only way he could do that is not by insurrection, not by anything like that. He has to do it through the courts. It has to stand on the laws of the land, not undermine the Supreme Court like Sheldon Whitehouse has been talking about. Okay, he's doing his job by protecting the rights of the people. Okay, the right to abortion is a right because you have the right to do that. But I can understand. So if you want to get rid of abortion, we have to look at all these other ideas, the spiritual ideas, and pull them apart. Okay? The right to create your life. Nobody can take away somebody's right to create the life that they want. Nobody can interfere with the right to do that. All right? Telling somebody they can't have an abortion is interfering in somebody's right to live their life without interference. So let's just say we're putting up kind of like walls to do that, but we also have to unravel the misunderstandings. And that's where, when we open up a dialogue, that's when it's good. We're opening a dialogue. When you give the people the right to have a voice in their government, that's an unalienable right. Okay, and this is where, okay, I don't necessarily want to take this, but in Colombia now the new Mu variant is coming about because the people don't have a right to have a voice in their government. So we have the Delta variant, but we now have a new variant, the Mu variant, where people are being denied the right to have a voice in their government, their unalienable right, and people are standing up and fighting for their rights. Okay, so are we going to, in the United States, are we going to have an insurrection because they feel that they don't have the right to have a voice in their government? Then if that's the case, if we have an insurrection, then you can be prepared for another peak, building on this peak of darkness. The Delta variant is the darkness that is taking over the world. People are angry at the darkness, angry at the fear, and it's just breeding and self-replicating. Then the next one is not to have a voice in their government. So we need to do things through the law, not by insurrection. Okay, so if we have the right to create our life, we have to be creating our life. We have to be fulfilling our purpose in life. And that is doing what's in everyone's best interest. And it's everyone's best interest to uphold the law. That's the first thing, to stand on the principles of universal law. We are endowed by our Creator with certain unalienable rights. The Constitution, the Supreme Court, the Constitution cannot take away anybody's rights. And it's up to the Senate. That's why the Senate is responsible for this. So contact your senator and encourage him or her to stand on the rights of the people, to protect the rights of the people. Okay? If you're going to do something, encourage them to do the rights of the people. All right. So this is not a grassroots movement. This is just letting you know that you have the right to do that, to have a voice in your government, okay? And to encourage him or her to do their job too. This is not a grassroots movement. This is Civics 101. All right? All right. Enough for today. Thank you. Please like, share, and subscribe because everybody needs to know this. Even if you don't like, share, and subscribe, pass this on to other people, okay? Thank you.